Welcome to Westbury Analytics Radio, where ServiceNow performance analytics for senior executives comes alive. Experienced ServiceNow architects, performance management experts, and other executives in your field share insights for how to drive performance management using the power of ServiceNow performance analytics. Performance analytics is a game changer, but it requires a different way of thinking than how most people think about reporting and performance measurement. Our goal here is to help you develop that new way of thinking. I am your host, Pedro Soto. Today we are joined by Chris Hanna. Chris is an HDI featured contributor and CEO of Evolving Management, which is dedicated to providing resources and solutions for leaders to evolve and enhance their impact and performance.
Okay, hello everybody. This is Pedro Soto, once again welcoming our listeners to another episode of Westbury Analytics Talk Radio. So today, our special guest for this episode of Chris is Chris Hanna. Chris is an HDI featured contributor and CEO of Evolving Management, which is dedicated to providing resources and solutions for leaders to evolve and to enhance their impact and performance in today's hyper-competitive marketplace. Chris, thanks for taking time from your busy schedule to join us. Please share with our listeners a little bit about you and how you got started with Evolving Management before we dive into our conversation.
Well, again, thanks for the opportunity to be here today and really share my journey. So as I started out throughout my career, I was really in a more of an operations focus, and I was kind of become more known as a turnaround specialist. I was always the guy who would go in and try and improve the operations, improve performance. If there was a location that needed to improve profitability or the customer experience, that was my thing. And so throughout my career, I had various opportunities in various industries, from car rental to providing a global product support team and managing that, to retail.
Wow.
And I eventually, started to realize that maybe there's something here that I can continue to share. And so I was fortunate in late 2018 to be recognized by ICMI as one of their inaugural movers and shakers in the customer experience industry. And that really got me thinking, like, maybe there's a message here that I can share some of these best practices and things that I've learned. I've been fortunate to have gone to many different conferences and events and stuff, and I realized there's an opportunity here to kind of give back. So I started, thinking about my management approach and the evolution that it's gone through. And that's where it's really started to take off in the last, couple of years. So at Evolving Management, I'm really focused on trying to help people rethink and evolve their approach to managing, because we've been doing the same thing for many, many decades as leaders, and there's an opportunity to continue to tweak and change that.
Yeah, that's excellent. Thanks for sharing that. And I want to get to our subject here, which is talking about employee experience. But before that, you mentioned ICMI. Can you tell us what is that organization?
Sure. ICMI if they're not familiar with it, it's the International Customer Management Institute. And so it's the sister organization of HDI, but it's more focused on the contact center space. And so I had the opportunity to, as I said, be a mover and shaker with them. And that eventually led to being a featured contributor and writing articles. So in 2019, I did some, featured contributor posts. I did some webinars. I actually got to speak at an event in Chicago. And then I've been able to be fortunate to do this in 2020 now on the HDI side as well, in being able to provide some additional thought leadership content with them.
Cool, thanks for that. So let's talk about employee experience. This podcast is very much focused towards the world of ServiceNow clients. And if anybody who follows the company, ServiceNow providing solutions, this has been a really key focus and strategic direction for them, which is employee experience. I was really glad to see that in your repertoire, you talk a lot about this and you have a lot of experience with this thing. So why focus on the employee experience?
Well, early on in my career, I really saw a connection between the employee experience and the customer experience. I really came to realize that if you just focus as a leader on your people, they'll take care of their customers, and that'll allow growth and profits, and that shared success for everyone to really follow. And so it really just simplifies the approach to really making that great long-term sense of value for your customers if you can just focus on your people first. And that's always been kind of that guiding mentality that I've used throughout my career as I've managed various pit stops throughout the last 15 years or so.
Now the challenge is, where we get caught into the day-to-day working and stuff. And I guess what are some of the challenges that leaders face when it comes to really maintaining and creating a positive employee experience?
Well, sometimes there's the risk that some people will over-engineer solutions and that they will overthink what needs to be done from the employee experience perspective, or they get caught up into the perks and parties kind of mentality and thinking that you can just provide people with food or
Ping pong
different
table.
celebrations. Yeah, ping pong table stuff, right? And sure, that's nice, but that doesn't really get to the root cause or the core of the employee experience side. I think that in my opinion, there's probably 4 key elements of the employee experience. And you're talking about things like, strategy, the people, the process, and the tools or the technology associated with it. But people seem to think that it's all just about trying to make people happy. But there's a lot of key elements that are important when it comes to employee experience that I think leaders just kind of get lost in.
Gotcha. So 4 key elements: strategy, people, process, and tools.
That's right.
Yeah.
Those are the ones that I've always kind of focused on.
Sure. When you say strategy, what do you mean?
Well, you have to have a game plan. If you don't have an idea of what you're going to try and do, like it's really the starting block for, driving a great employee experience. And really, I think it's what determines what you're going to do as you move forward. Like, so I'll give you an example. Throughout my career, like every year when you're doing, planning for the year ahead, like you try and group or theme the year. And so that theme or that strategy really determines what me or my team are going to do and focus on. So in one year, I had a game plan where we're just going to kind of work smarter, not harder. So therefore, It's like all about, let's find ways to be more efficient. Let's try and make sure we're doing the things that make sense and provide value. Far too often, teams will focus on priorities that really don't make a lot of sense, or it's not done in an efficient way, and it just burns people out. So just theming it is a key focus for every year as I kind of relate to the strategy of it.
Yeah, excellent. Let's go down each of those components, right? So the second one, people, what do you mean by that?
So when focusing on people, it's really prioritizing them. As a leader, many times people think that their accomplishments are driven by themselves, but as a leader, you need to prioritize your people in devoting coaching and development to them, making sure you're there to support them. A lot of leaders need to remember that it's important to note that your success is determined by your team, not by your own results. And that's what I mean kind of on the people side, is that you're there as a servant leader in a lot of ways.
Yep. Excellent. Process, one can infer what that is, but I'd love to hear what's been your experience, what you've learned and observed when it comes to process.
Well, I mentioned the word over-engineer, and I think when I talk about process, it's something where it's almost simplifying it, making it easy for employees to do the work that they do. The job of a leader in a lot of ways is to get stones and obstacles out of their team's path so that they can provide better value to the customer experience, to the business in general. And so by simplifying processes, that's where a leader can really help drive the employee experience in the right way.
Yeah, gotcha. And tools, when it comes to tools, what do you mean by that?
Well, it links to the strategy, right? But from a tool perspective, it's vital that leaders are taking a look always and saying, okay, what's the new technology and the tools that will make the process better, that will make the customer experience better? So there's an element of trying to get more feedback from your team to determine what are the key tools that will produce maybe a certain level of reporting or a certain level of automation or self-service. just to make ultimately everyone's lives easier. I think a lot of organizations in some ways still underutilize technology, or there's an overinvestment in technology, but they don't use all the features that are there. So it's finding a way to just, optimize that technology and use it the best way.
Excellent. Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, that's one of the things that ServiceNow has really excelled in, just a way to provide workflows that really improve employee experience. And I guess it comes from that connection you were talking about earlier, that when you take care of your employees, they'll take care of the customers.
Yeah, whenever you could have the technology or the tools, drive the work more easily, it can make a world of difference. I we spend so much time throughout our lives working, right? So if a leader can find tools and technology that can make their team's lives easier, that's going to translate ultimately through to the customer as well. And so when you talk about ServiceNow and having different workflows, that's what a lot of employees are now expecting. They're expecting that automated workflow that can and make everything so much simpler.
Yeah, so they can actually focus on providing value down the value chain wherever they may be at, instead of working just to work the process.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you said a turning point in your career was when you sort of were looked to as a turnaround specialist and brought into scenarios to turn operations around. What are some of the things that you were surprised to discover as you were turning around some of these situations?
Well, that it can be so simple sometimes, the answer, but sometimes a different perspective is just needed. Back when if I go back to my early days, I was in the car rental business, and I would go into branches, and the customer satisfaction results would be in a pretty rough spot. And it was only just because that branch wouldn't look at each customer as an opportunity to really try and make a difference or focus. So it would be things like, let's just do some training, with some different, members of the branch to try and tweak the performance or get them to think about, the customers better. I sometimes say this to some different folks when I'm talking about, the customer experience, is like, it can be as easy as just thinking like, what kind of support would you provide your parent or your one of your loved ones? If you think about it from that perspective, you're actually probably going to treat them differently. And it can be so simple. The other thing that I thought was important as talk about turning around operations is to have a continuous improvement mindset, right? What one little difference can you make? How can you just be better every single day? And it's not about massive change. It's about 1% improvements. And those add up over time. And I think that's a key message. And it's a key belief that if you can get teams to start adopting a continuous improvement mindset and culture, you can really start to move the dial.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. You're right. 1% improvements over time. In my experience, I've seen them make more impact than try to make some massive change that's very hard to sustain, because emotionally and just effort-wise, human beings can't sustain massive changes over a long period of time.
Well, and I think there's a linkage to the strategy too, right? So say a leader wants to have some sort of massive change, you have to break it down into small chunks. And if you break it down into small chunks, it's more absorbable by everybody. It's easier from a change management perspective. And so over time, it looks like massive change, but when people are actually in it, it can feel more sustainable, and it's easier to absorb when it's just little chunks at a time, or little actions that eventually, when you look in the aggregate, they really, are something different.
Gotcha. What kind of trends do you see as you're engaging with business leaders and managers and leaders of teams? What are some trends that you're seeing that people should keep an eye on in terms of employee experience?
Yeah, well, one of the biggest ones I think right now, you're going to see a lot more of this throughout the 2020s, is around workplace flexibility. there's a lot of conversations about, whether it's say Microsoft and what
Yeah.
they did in Japan with the
The
40-hour
four
work
day.
week, the
Yeah.
four
Yeah.
day.
4 day. Yeah.
And then there's countries like Finland who are kind of implementing different legislation around some of this stuff as well. I think you're going to see more and more of that flexibility because people are now starting to realize that you can work when, where, and how you want. The office is becoming less and less of a need. It's one of the things I'm speaking at Support World Live in April in Las Vegas at the MGM Grand, and it's about flexible scheduling, and it's about this conversation really about how people need to develop new ways to schedule folks and provide an opportunity for them to work wherever it makes sense.
Uh-huh.
Because with that, you'll start to see less of the office space becoming
Yes.
the central location, right?
Yep.
I think that's a huge trend that's just starting to probably even take further um, in the future.
Sure. Workplace flexibility. Very cool. What else?
And then, and
What's
I think
another
another
trend?
big trend that I see, especially from like the customer perspective, is that the channels are changing. So
Okay.
by that I mean the phone
Uh-huh.
demographically is no longer going to be the channel of choice, right?
Uh-huh. Yep.
You look at things like live chat, SMS, email, social media. Those are obviously the channels that people are kind of going to. And the phone just is not going to be a thing anymore. You look at anybody who, let's put them in the millennial bucket.
Yeah.
It's all about texting and what you can do with your phone, but not actually using it as a phone. It's
Yes.
less of the voice conversation, right?
Yes. Yeah, it's fascinating. I mean, my kids are millennials. They just do not like to talk on the phone. Even to me, okay, I'm pretty safe. Imagine
Well,
strangers.
I know, like it's amazing when you different age groups will use it differently, right?
Yeah.
When someone gets a phone call, they'll look at them like, "Oh, I'm not answering that," even though they might know who that person is, right? It's
Yeah.
looking at the phone as like almost like an interruption. So now you
Yeah.
kind of can go and do it when it is more convenient for you, but people will still more text versus call back. So I think it's fascinating, but I do see that as a major trend that's really starting to change quite a bit.
Yeah. Okay, here goes a little bit of a tough one. So if you can't come up with it, no worries. So what's something in this subject that you think leaders should be paying attention to, but they're not?
In terms of the phone piece,
No, I'm sorry, employee experience.
employee experience, um, I think that a lot of leaders are not thinking about development and offering project work enough
Mm,
as they probably should, right?
okay.
So a lot of organizations will like, here's your job description, and people kind of, this is what they do, and this is day in and day out, it's the same thing, but they don't think about what are those things to keep the role evolving. And so giving people that flex time to develop a new tool or come up with new processes or drive some little change or continuous improvement, whether it's things like through project work,
Hmm.
that needs to be something that people need to, leaders need to continue to focus on to improve the employee experience. It gives the employees something interesting to do, but it also can
Yeah,
provide more value to help evolve um, processes and the organization just as a whole. And it's also incredibly engaging,
yeah.
right? It gives people those opportunities to kind of stretch. I think about a company like 3M, where
Mhm.
everyone has dedicated time to kind of just help drive new changes and innovation. I think that's something that more organizations probably need to start looking at. And I think employees are almost kind of wanting that opportunity.
Oh, that's excellent. Yeah, because it also brings some novelty that can have productive results for the company, but for the employee, it helps them develop and grow and be challenged, right?
Well, yeah, the more you can do some of this stuff, the more you can almost build up, in some cases, an internal resume of different
Yeah.
ideas that you can use to maybe progress your career within the organization or, outside of that as well, right? But that's an opportunity just to drive that innovation. And I think that's what organizations are really needing to continue to focus on um, throughout, to 2020s and beyond, just to be competitive because it's
Yep,
such a competitive market out there.
that's right. Oh, that's awesome. Very good. Hey, Chris, any parting thoughts before we wrap it up in terms of resources, things that you would recommend to listeners that have an interest in this subject to to dig deeper?
Well, I think that there's a lot of great work on sites like HDI with their upcoming conferences that they have in terms of
Yeah.
podcasts. Some of the work that ICMI has specifically on the contact center side and customer experience. I've got some of my own resources and content on my own website, evolvingmanagement.com, that's focused on that connection to the customer experience and the employee experience too. There's just a plethora of great resources out there for folks just to continue to improve and evolve their approach to how they manage their teams and make really that difference in driving innovations. So I think that those are some of the big ones that's out there as well.
All right, thanks. So as we say goodbye and we close this out, can you share with our listeners and viewers what are some of the things you're involved in here coming up in the next few months that they may have an opportunity to either meet you or look you up?
Sure. I have the opportunity to connect again with folks at Support World Live in Las Vegas at the MGM Grand, where I'm leading a session on flexible scheduling, and that's through HDI. In addition to that, in May, I'm speaking at ICMI Expo. I got a couple sessions there, one on eliminating waste, and so you can have more value left over as a team. In addition to that, I'm also speaking about the importance of the agent experience and how to develop a world-class program. So those are some of the big events over the next couple of months as I continue just to share this. And people can also follow me on social media, whether it's Instagram, LinkedIn, Twitter, as well, or connect with me directly through my site too.
All right, excellent. And again, that site is evolvingmanagement.com, right?
That's right.
Cool. Chris, thanks a lot again for taking time out of your schedule to talk with us, and hopefully you'll be able to make some time in the future and come and visit again.
I appreciate the opportunity, and I'd love to do it. Thank you, Pedro.
Thanks, Chris. Have a great
Thank
day.
you.
We see a time when all business leaders using ServiceNow Performance Analytics will easily know how to leverage its power to help them reach their business goals. Performance Analytics offers you a way to do that. To discover how you can get there faster, send us an email to info@westburyanalytics.com.